This is Stigma, where we talk with leaders from many industries about how mental health and addiction have impacted their lives. Many people suffer silently from mental illness, addiction, depression, anxiety, and trauma. They never seek help because of stigma. In this podcast, host Stephen Hayes and his guests share their stories of recovery in order to encourage others to do the same. Here's Stephen.
Welcome back to another episode of the Stigma podcast. Today's guest is Danielle Ramo. Danielle is a clinical psychologist and the senior director of research at HopeLab, which is a nonprofit social innovation lab based in San Francisco that creates behavior change tech to help teens and young adults live happier, healthier lives. She's worked on a lot of projects in this capacity, from addressing loneliness among college students to teen vaping, mental health of young parents, young people with cancer, and many other topics as well. She's also an adjunct professor of psychiatry at the UC San Francisco. She leads a research program at the intersection of substance use and digital mental health. And she's published over 80 peer-reviewed publications and multiple pieces of content, articles, blogs, books on drug use and mental health. Last week, early April, HopeLab and Grit Digital Health officially launched an app called Nod, whose public mission is to reduce loneliness in young people and prevent adverse effects of that loneliness during COVID-19 and beyond. And Danielle's going to explain more about that during our chat. The Nod app is available in the Apple and Google Play stores, and there are a number of resources mentioned during this conversation. They will all be linked in the show notes. But without further ado, Danielle, thank you for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Stephen. Thanks for inviting me.
So can you tell us and our audience a little bit about HopeLab at a high level, what you guys are, what you guys do?
Sure. HopeLab is a social innovation nonprofit that creates behavior change tech to support adolescent health and emotional well-being. We've created everything from our first product, a video game, to chatbots, to apps, all supporting various aspects of emotional health, physical health, behavior change, and well-being among young people. We've worked with many different types of populations, young families, people who have undergone cancer treatment, young people who have just received a cancer diagnosis. We'll talk a little bit about the work that we're doing for college student mental health. We're also working on LGBTQIA+ mental health right now. We're working on teen vaping. So these are just some of the many areas in which we work at HopeLab.
How big is the team, and sort of where was it? How did the HopeLab idea come together? What's sort of the founding story of HopeLab?
HopeLab is part of the Omidyar group of philanthropic organizations that are supported by Pam and Pierre Omidyar. HopeLab itself, which is now a team of about 30 folks, was started directly by Pam Omidyar, who had a vision to use technology, and in her vision, it was a video game, to support young people who had had cancer diagnoses. She wondered if she could create an interactive video game that was as beautiful and as functional as the world's best video games. Could it actually result in behavior change? And the first game that HopeLab made was called Remission. And it was, users were inside the body of a person with cancer and using chemotherapy to essentially kill cancer cells. And that translated to a feeling that young people had control over this disease that may have felt like it was a little out of control. And there was a 20-site randomized trial published in Pediatrics showing that playing the video game Remission was associated with increased chemotherapy metabolites in the bodies of young people with cancer. So essentially, using technology to support behavior change worked in this case. And then HopeLab blossomed, and now, as I mentioned, we work in a lot of different areas with other populations of young people.
And back in January, Stigma put out a report on loneliness. And one of the things they mention is that of the Gen Z respondents to that survey, 79% said they struggle with loneliness. And it just seems like younger folks are either being more open about or are facing more mental health struggles these days. Why is that so prevalent in our younger population?
Yeah. So, Stephen, this is something I think about a lot. And I really think you hit on two aspects of the mental health experience of young people today. The first is that there is an increased openness about sharing around mental health functioning and the things that we're struggling with. Technology and social media certainly afford an opportunity to share more openly. So, folks who are feeling down either momentarily or struggling more deeply with things like clinical depression or anxiety are often more open about that online or hopefully also with people in their real lives. And I feel like to some extent that has to do with a reduced stigma associated with experiencing mental health struggles. And you're certainly doing your part in that with having this podcast. So thank you very much for that. And I generally see that as a good thing. However, we're also seeing increased rates of mental health diagnoses, and especially we're noticing patterns that are increasing among young people. And this is the area that I work mostly on in my research. And the tools that we build at HopeLab directly do support young people. You mentioned the Stigma report, which was a large national survey conducted in 2018 and 2019, showing that Gen Z, so the youngest adults, are indeed the loneliest generation alive today. Loneliness is often thought of as an affliction in the elderly, but actually older adults were less lonely than adults of middle age or younger adults.
What's causing this? I mean, is it like, I think the casual flippant answer is, well, everyone's looking at their phone, but is that really it?
Well, I get asked that question a lot. And frankly, I think it would be easy to blame technology for loneliness. But unfortunately, it's not that simple. HopeLab really delved into this question in a survey that we conducted in 2018 with 1,400 young people who were age 14 to 22. And we looked specifically at the relationship between technology use and social media use and experiences of loneliness. And we found there was no relationship between extent of social media use and experiences of loneliness, depression, anxiety, or other kinds of negative emotions or mental health issues. So we can't just say using technology a lot makes people more lonely. But we did find some real differences in the patterns of how people were using social media based on some of their mental health patterns. So the folks who were most lonely did say that they were less likely to get comments or likes for the things that they posted. They were more likely to say that the things they posted didn't get positive reactions from friends or others. But we also saw some interesting information on the other side, which was that the folks who were most lonely also said that they use social media to get support from their social communities. So, for young people, there is this particular opportunity that social media and technology afford because it's so well integrated into young people's lives, because there is often this sense of community and closeness among their the worlds that they have within social media, and that allows people to feel like they can get support using technology too. So it's not just, in as much as technology might be causing some massive changes about how we interact on a societal level, there's also some real opportunity to support young people with their mental health at this time too, particularly at this time.
And so I know you guys have recently launched something called Nod, which does just this, right? So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that.
Sure. So HopeLab and Grit Digital Health have worked together along with hundreds of young people to co-create an app called Nod. Nod addresses the high rate of loneliness specifically among the college student population. We started off making a tool that would help young people meet their social goals in college. Now, college is a unique time socially, right? It's a time of big transition. A lot of people are coming to sometimes new cities, certainly new social arenas where they're overwhelmed with numbers of people that are new to them. But it's often hard to make social connections and to go deep in that kind of environment. And we're seeing that if young people don't meet their expectations of what their social lives will be like in college, then they are at risk for experiencing negative emotions, and even for becoming clinically depressed, anxious, socially anxious. And we're seeing higher rates of things like suicidality and suicide among college students in particular, as well as a risk of dropping out after the first year when students say they feel socially isolated. So HopeLab and Grit had identified this particular time as risky and one in which there needed to be better interventions. So we were already working on this product to support college students making social connections. And then here came the COVID-19 pandemic. And all of a sudden, college students found themselves still immersed in their academic worlds because a lot of their coursework went entirely online, but they're, let's say, back at home, or they're entirely separated from the friendship communities that they may have met in college. And it became an entirely different social world. So we wanted to take Nod online, make it freely available to all students. And frankly, anyone who is interested in getting some tips to support making social connections and going deeper with the social connections they have during this particularly crazy time.
So how does a student use the app? So they download it, and what's the sort of user interface look like, and what does it do for you? And is it one of the things you had mentioned? Maybe this is a separate question, but is that there's these social expectations? Is it helping students manage their social expectations, or is it helping provide connectivity? What's sort of how are people engaging with it?
Sure, I'd be happy to talk about all of that. So Nod is an app that allows people to notice our ideas that we have about friendship, address maybe some misconceptions that we have about making new social connections, and then give skills to support young people making new connections and going deeper with the ones that they have. So Nod is freely available and downloadable via the Apple and Android app stores under the name Nod app. And when a user gets into the app, they get into an onboarding process that talks about friendship in a way that helps to reduce some of the expectations that friendship is supposed to come easy. A lot of people get to college and they think friendships are going to just come right at me. I'm going to make the best friends in my life. And, they've been told that by the media, by their parents, this idea that we're going to make our best friends for life and it's just going to be quite easy, right? But in reality,
it's just going to be handed to you, or it's just going to naturally happen. Like everybody's looking for the same thing I am. So since we're all looking for the same thing, we're going to connect.
That's right. Like it's just supposed to be delivered to us on a platter. But in reality, friendship takes work. It's something that, like a lot of aspects of our health and functioning and well-being and happiness, we actually do have to work at it in order to get better. And frankly, making social connections is something that if we practice, we can get better and better at. So we jump right in during the onboarding process to supporting this idea that friendship is going to take effort and that it is something that can come more easily over time. Then Nod delivers two main features. The first is challenges. So these are everything from kind of light or challenges that people might find easier, like send a text to a friend letting them know that you're thinking about them, or take a recommendation you've heard this week and share it with someone else, to challenges that might be a little bit harder for some folks, like join a club that you've been curious about and DM someone who's involved in that club to let them know that you're interested in joining, right? Something that takes a little more time and effort. So we've got these challenges, and we hope that users will take on as many challenges as they want to be able to see that they can grow their friendships and make more connections with people they already know and also folks that they can can meet through their college communities. We also have reflections in the app. So reflections understand that challenges can go many ways. For some, challenges go really well. And in that case, we want to support people feeling good after a challenge experience. So reflections when someone's feeling good after a challenge could be something like deliver some kindness to someone else, help the positive emotional experience after that challenge stick around a little bit longer. We also recognize that sometimes challenges don't go people's way. You may have reached out to someone and they didn't text back. In that case, we want to support people not taking that on internally, because some of the loneliest folks, or certainly those experiencing depression or anxiety, might tend to blame ourselves. We might tend to blow a negative experience out of proportion by taking it on, thinking that every experience we're going to have will be negative in the future. And reflections support people not taking some of those things on or blowing them out of proportion too deeply.
That's really cool. It's almost like there's a coach there that's helping you find something positive, even in the negative outcome of a I don't know, maybe quote unquote failed challenge in a way.
That's right. We really think it's important to process things that don't go as well as we had hoped with a lens of self-compassion. Now, I do want to be clear that Nod isn't a coach. It's not a bot, and it's not a live person. It's all automated, and that makes it really easy to use, really easy to deliver. And it's something that we wanted to make sure we started with so that young people have access to it 24/7. It's based on evidence-based interventions that support anxiety, social anxiety, and self-compassion theory, which we thought was really important because it is so, how we treat ourselves is so related to our experience of loneliness.
Yeah. How do people find it? Where is it? Do I go to the website? Is it App Store? I mean, I think I see here that it's in the Google Play Store and the Apple Store, but where are most people learning of it for the first time?
They're learning of it directly from the stores, and you can certainly go to Nod app in Google Play or Apple stores. They're also learning about it from their college campuses. So I mentioned that HopeLab partnered with Grit Digital Health in the effort to build Nod. Grit is a company that has a platform called You at College that personalizes well-being for every student. It's a platform that exists on many different campuses throughout the United States that offers thousands of resources. It's a compilation of resources for students. So a lot of students are finding out about Nod directly from their college if their college already subscribes to the You at College platform. But we're also trying to share Nod as widely as possible in platforms such as writing. I wrote an article for Thrive Global last week talking about how we can support social connection during this time of physical distancing. And we're just hoping that as many young people as possible can have access to Nod during this time when their social worlds were already changing a lot when they went to college, and now they've changed even more quite recently.
And how can people get involved and help out? Or maybe that's the wrong question. You mentioned that it's free. So I'm assuming that as it grows, there'll be more. Will it stay free, or is it something where more help is needed? Can people get involved and help you guys here? How does that look?
Well, we wanted to be immediately responsive to the changes that have come with physical distancing in the COVID-19 pandemic. So we immediately made Nod free during the time that folks are physically distanced. So while we have the shelter-in-place orders, we will make sure that Nod remains free. Nod will not necessarily be free forever. Nod will be available on college campuses that subscribe to Nod, and we hope that that will be as many campuses as even more campuses than we possibly could have imagined coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. There'll be a lot of changes in the fall on college campuses. Things are going to be quite different than they were last fall. And I'll give you one example. At HopeLab, we test all of the products that we make. We make sure that our products have promised to actually move the health indicators that we care about. And we have conducted a randomized trial at the University of Oregon where we're sharing just some early preliminary results that we saw NOD supported reduced depression and reduced loneliness among the students who were most vulnerable when they came into their beginning of their first year of college. So that was really promising for us. We're looking to share those results more widely now. But, we are going to need to reevaluate how well NOD works for students in the new era that will come up next fall. It's going to be a really different time on college campuses throughout the United States. So we expect that students can get involved through enrolling in a study to evaluate how NOD works. We're also really interested in how students are using NOD and what they think about NOD. So if you're listening to this and you are a college student or college students, please share NOD with them while it's free and ask them to send us feedback about NOD. We'd love to hear how people are using it and whether the challenges are feeling particularly resonant during this time.
That's great. Yeah, I hope people will check it out. And as we think a little bit about the way the students' world will change and what college will look like when we go back next, hopefully in the coming school year, what opportunities exist around student mental health for entrepreneurs to try to be solving? I mean, it sounds to me like a ripe environment where there's this mental health problem, there's loneliness, there's a lot of change, there's the world has turned upside down with the way we're going to interact in the future. There's got to be a lot of opportunity to build even more solutions in this space.
Oh, Stephen, the opportunity is absolutely immense at this time. And, next fall, it's going to be even bigger than we ever could have imagined. I think we're going to see a few years where college campuses are affected, as will be a lot of other places, by the effects on mental and behavioral health that the experience of COVID have had on our society. The college student mental health space, you asked about startups and mental health companies. The opportunity is there because there is a huge need, and there'll be a particularly large need to develop solutions that can be disseminated at scale. And that definitely means technology will be part of the answer to the question of how we address problems in mental health functioning among college students. There are resources on all college campuses. The You at College platform that I mentioned earlier is an example of an online resource that's available to over 100,000 students now. But things like mental health services on college campuses are not able to provide nearly the support that keeps up with the need on college campuses. So companies that are in the digital mental health space are going to need to be able to be responsive to the need, but also, college campuses, I think, are not going to be able to invest in solutions that are very expensive at the outset. So I think that will need to grow from a place of colleges not being able to fund a lot of solutions right this year and next year, while things are still in question around enrollment and things like that.
But the colleges are going to have to do something. I mean, they aren't going to be able to build mental health clinics on campus that can take care of all of the needs. So they're going to have to find a way to either purchase or license or acquire some sort of technology or some sort of digital solution that helps their students. Because, I mean, if you're a large university, you've got 50,000 students on campus. I mean, what are you going to do? Build a entire set of buildings just to treat mental health? I mean, you're just not going to do that.
That's right. You're not going to do it. You're not going to be able to do it. And the good news is there are solutions that involve technology that are so already at the fingertips of all the students on a campus, right? So solutions that are lighter touch, I think, are going to be desired more by college campuses. You're also going to need to go deeper and have things like therapy and counseling and medication management available to students. But you really have to have that combined strategy. I think administrators are looking at everything from the broad wellness space, like what tools can be available to everyone in the vulnerable time of transitioning to college, and as well, how can they support those students that are starting to have some problems with mental health, that are suffering, that maybe their grades are dropping, they're having trouble keeping up with their classes, they're not leaving their dorm rooms, they're starting to feel bad all the time, and how can college campuses support those students getting an even deeper level of help that isn't necessarily going to be the same thing as waiting months for a counselor at their college mental health offices.
Yeah, I agree. This has been awesome. What am I missing? What am I forgetting to ask about that's important to know about Nod?
Well, Nod is an example of a product that I was already so proud to work on as a clinical psychologist. It was an example of a great partnership that HopeLab makes between users and our population that we aim to affect to co-create our products, as well as a partnership with Grit Digital Health that was already thinking about college student mental health. And, we thought we had a great product that was going to support people making connections in person. And we were going along, and then the COVID-19 pandemic hit and the whole world changed, right? So we were able to really be responsive quickly in this time of need. And I'm even more proud of what we were able to get out in the world quickly and offer freely available to college students. So I hope as many people as possible will check out Nod by downloading it via the Google Play or Apple stores under Nod app. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share about this work, Stephen.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really excited about what HopeLab is doing. And one of the things I've been doing to wrap up these conversations lately is I'm going to ask a series of just real quick questions. I mean, it's really just so our audience gets to know you a little bit better. I mean, it's going to be, favorite this or favorite that, and, kind of quick 3 to 5 second answers, whatever comes to mind first, no wrong answer. And what I like to ask first is favorite mental health app. Do you have one in mind?
Well, Nod.
Yeah, there you go. It's okay to say your own. Favorite book. What's your favorite book?
I will say I'm using Headspace a lot for myself and for my kids, but I also love Nod.
What about favorite book?
Oh, there are so many good ones. In the whole world. So I'll just share one that my kids and I are reading right now, and my partner and I have also been sharing, called How to Raise an Adult by Julie Lythcott-Haims. We're literally reading it this week.
Awesome. What about favorite movie?
We just watched Indiana Jones this weekend.
Nice.
Raiders of the Lost Ark. That was a great one.
Great family classic there. You'd mentioned Headspace is something you guys like. And then kind of final question, 2 questions. What's your favorite self-care activity?
I've been doing a lot of yoga and mindfulness practice during this time.
That's good.
Yeah, it's been very important, and it's really supported my mental health.
And last question I always want to ask folks is around stigma. What can someone listening, or you or I, be doing right now to help reduce stigma and encourage people to talk about mental health and get help when they need it, or encourage someone else to get help when they need it?
Putting out as much as possible the validation that everyone struggles with mental health problems at different times of our lives. Being honest and open that it's okay to talk about when things are hard. It's also okay to ask for help. And if you are a friend or a loved one of someone who seems to be struggling, offer that help. It's really important that we not hide and put things like addiction and mental health problems into the closet. Stephen, what you're doing with this podcast is really important in reducing stigma. As a clinical psychologist and someone who's been thinking about addiction and mental health treatment for my whole career, I try to write as much as I can to try to support reducing stigma, especially among young people. And I hope others will feel comfortable and confident sharing that it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on and doing this today. And I'm really, really grateful again for your time and what you guys are working on.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been my pleasure.
Another special thank you to Danielle for coming on. We will link to a number of the things she mentioned in the episode, as well as her social profiles in the show notes and on our website. You can find us online at stigmapodcast.com. Also want to say thank you to our listeners for being here. Your continued and increasing support is really honestly what makes this whole thing possible. If you enjoy our content, then we'd be really grateful for a like or a subscribe or a review on your podcast platform of choice. As we grow our following, we're able to bring you more and more mental health content. And we want to hear from you, more importantly than anything else. We want to hear from you on social. We want to hear from you over email. You can find us on Twitter at StigmaCast. You can find us on email at info@stigmapodcast.com. We would love to hear your feedback. And that's it for this episode. And we look forward to talking with you soon.